So you gave a fantastic message of trying to dilute and soften extremists on both sides. How do you deal with extremists on the Israeli side, such as Orthodox Jews, evangelical Christians, those who believe in a greater Israel to annex even more land? Tell us about that side of the challenge.
Listen, extremists are challenging at all sides at all times. I think what we're lacking these days is patience. And you can have your beliefs, and I'm definitely a religious believer, a Jewish believer, and I believe in what we're told in the Bible. But I understand that we can't have everything that we believe and want here and now. And there's time for everything, and there's a process that needs to happen. And at the moment, maybe we can get part of our belief. We don't need to attempt to get everything, and by that maybe lose what we actually have.
Now, you're a former lawyer. What do you think, are there problems in resting Israel's moral authority on religious texts?
I don't know if that is how I would phrase it. What I would say is that when I address groups, when I'm asked that question, I don't need to go back to the biblical promises and to the Bible proof that this is where our land is. Why? Because I understand that the audience that I'm speaking to has different levels of belief. Not everybody shares the same levels of belief that I have. I claim that we have enough legal arguments to justify our right to live here without going all the way back to biblical times. Why? Because of the peace agreements that we've signed with the Arab countries who were the occupiers of the land before we were attacked in 1967. They thought that they would push us into the sea. They ended up with us widening our borders in the east, in the north, and in the south. So when people say it's against international law, one, it can come from lack of knowledge of international law. Two, not remembering the accurate history. And number three, not understanding that the situation is way more complex than right or wrong.
What's your message to, I guess, some of pro-Israel supporters who believe all Muslims or all Palestinians are ultimately dangerous and possibly even terrorists?
It's a hard message. It's a hard message because we believe that every human being is different from animals, has the capability to understand and to think. And to generalize and say that all people from a specific religion hate us is hard for me to believe. I can tell you that I have meetings with Muslims, religious Muslims. They quote for me from the Quran things which don't go alongside with what some of the extremists say that that's what their religion teaches them to do. They might be too afraid to speak out their minds. They might be afraid of the small, extreme, loud, violent minority who doesn't allow the rational people to speak out. My attempt is to try and find ways to engage with the large, sane, silent majority, and I think we have them on both sides.
Now, having read just one of your op-eds, you mentioned have Islamic State on your doorstep. Now, how helpful is that in terms of trying to soften extremist opinion on both sides, especially when there's a significant territorial dimension here that may not exist in other areas?
I think Israel's strategy, investing in very sophisticated intelligence, at the end of the day has proved itself. Despite the complexity of the conflict in this region, and as you mentioned with the territory issue, we see that Israel is probably the only place where the Islamic State hasn't managed to step a foot down. We see that areas that we've actually evacuated, whether it's Lebanon in the north or the Sinai Desert in the south, have become areas where the Islamic State has managed to step a foot in, sometimes very viciously, sometimes very frighteningly. People are unaware that in South Lebanon, where Israel was until they were forced to go out because of political international pressure, there are today 130,000 missiles planted underneath houses, schools, hotels, hospitals, aimed to be launched towards the state of Israel. These people go to sleep at night not being aware that they're sleeping on a massive ammunition bunker that can explode at any minute. And that's frightening, and that's a threat over Israel. And I can say that within the borders of Israel, we haven't experienced that, but we're definitely aware of what's happening just beyond our borders.
Is there any risk that the rest of the world, including the Arab world, will care less and less about the Israeli-Palestinian issue?
I think what we're seeing is slightly different. I think they're starting to understand to call a spade a spade. They are starting to understand that if the Palestinian people would have wanted to reach an understanding, an agreement, a peace agreement, it could have been reached. We say about the Palestinians that they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity, and they have become professionals in doing it. But we see more and more Arab countries who see that they have an interest with linking up with Israel for various reasons, which bring them a lot of added value. And that's what we're starting to see, and I think that's going to spread as time goes on.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm Tanbir Ahmed. If you want to see more content like this, go to rebelisrael.com.